Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today. I'm Taylor Comblusier, a mining analyst at Red Cloud Securities. Today's webinar features Strategic Metals Ltd, which is a successful project generator with a large portfolio of interests in over 120 properties and shared interests in other exploration companies through project farmouts, investments, and royalty sales. Since our previous webinar with the company last fall, it has added the Craig project in East Central Yukon via staking to its existing Crag and Rod projects. It optioned its Kwani project in the Yukon, and it has announced plans for geophysical surveys at its Mint, Alata, and CD Porphyry copper projects in the southwest Yukon. Today, I have with me on the webinar Doug Eaton, who's the President, CEO, and Director, as well as Richard Drexler, who's the Vice President of Communications at Strategic Metals. The format of today's webinar will be comprised of 2 parts. In the first part, Doug will provide an update on Strategic Metals, including its latest corporate and exploration activities. In the second part, we'll take your questions live. So please send your questions in using the chat function, and we'll get to as many as we can. And I'll note that you can type in your questions at any point. To start, we'll handle the disclosures and then get into the presentation. So for Strategic Metals, there may be some forward-looking statements made on this call. I direct listeners to the cautionary note on page 2 of the Strategic Metals corporate presentation located on the company's website. For Red Cloud Securities Inc., I would highlight that this webinar is for information purposes only and should not be considered a solicitation to purchase or sell securities or a recommendation to buy or sell securities. And we note that this call does not take into account the particular situation or needs of individual investors. Participants should rely on their own investigations and seek their own professional advice before investment. For Strategic Metals, I would direct viewers to our research portal for our up-to-date disclosures. So with that out of the way, I'll go over to Doug to update you on Strategic Metals and what you have to look forward to with the company.
Thanks very much, Taylor. Okay, so without further ado, we'll launch straight in here. There's our forward-looking statements, as previously stated. Okay, so some of the highlights. Taylor mentioned some of the big changes that have happened in the last few months. Just to reiterate, though, we have a very large portfolio of mineral projects in BC and Yukon primarily, and a little bit northern BC and the western part of the Northwest Territories. Covered virtually every deposit type known to man and most significant commodities that people are exploring for in the mineral category. And we have a building portfolio of net smelter return royalty interests that we plan to keep grooming and building over time. We have multiple projects under option at the present time. Just to mention a couple, one that happened since the last webinar was an option to Juno Mining of our Kalani property. It's typical of many of our deals. They can earn up to 100% interest, but they have to pay us cash, in this case, $250,000, give us 10% of their shares, and most importantly, perhaps we retain a 2% NSR. So it's a way that we can gradually build that royalty portfolio. Another project that is very exciting, and there is an update for it since the last update. CAVU Energy Metals is working on our Hopper property. That's typical of another style of deal we do. They can earn up to 70% of that project. They have to spend a lot of money, $5 million, and they have to pay us $700,000 in cash as well and give us some of their shares. So again, we're quite flexible in our deal making, always looking for a good fit. As mentioned, we have a big portfolio of other shares in other companies. We'll touch on that in more detail in a little bit. 2 or 3 of note, Broden Mining, we'll talk a bit about that. Rockhaven Resources, just completing a significant financing and just starting a drill program. And GGL Resources, a project working in Nevada. So we'll come back to each of those. Got about $7 million in cash at the present time and no debt. And we think we've been quite successful using the knowledge of a related consulting group, and they're very large databases, as well as my own personal experience. I've got more than 50 years working in Yukon. Won't touch too much on that, except to say a very stable group of directors and officers. We've worked together for a number of years with some pretty significant success. Okay, this is kind of the meat of the story right now to some degree. We've got just under 11 million shares outstanding. Um, Goes up to just a little over 130 on a fully diluted basis. But there are a number of the warrants that are scheduled to expire here later in July. So that number could come down a bit if they're not exercised. Current market cap, obviously it fluctuates around. Uh, I think it's actually today it's a little bit below 33 million. Cash a little over 7 million. Um, we've got about $39 million approximately in shareholdings in other companies. And we've distributed over the last 10 years through plans of arrangement about $20 million in dividends to our shareholders. We always like to point that out. It sets us apart from a lot of our peers. No debt, strong support from Condir. They're just over 17% now. Sprott is very stable at around 9%, and Ruppers brought their interest up to just under 10%. Management on a outstanding basis is just under 9%. Obviously, that grows on the fully diluted. Okay, so again, why are we where we're at? Yukon is blessed in that it sits astride a number of really important mineral belts. One of them is the Northern Cordilleran Gold Province. Fantastic endowment of gold in that belt of rocks. We're sitting right in the middle of it. One of the things we like about it is that the majors have invested a lot of money in that belt in the last few years. Fairly recently, Rio Tinto coming in at the casino. But as you can see on the graphic, that there's a number of players have made very large investments in the belt. So that very prospective for gold. It's also a belt that's well known for its porphyry copper potential. That's again anchored in Yukon by the casino. Casino came out with a positive feasibility statement today. So they're hopefully going to be moving forward through permitting. But there are a number of other belts, porphyry deposits in the belt, up and down the province of British Columbia and extending into Alaska. And they're quite varied. It isn't just one package of rocks. There's Triassic age, mid-Jurassic age, at least 3 ages of Cretaceous and Tertiary belts within that larger belt. So we've got showings of representative of each of those major age categories. Just to give you a bit of a flavor of some of the porphyry targets that we have, Taylor mentioned that we're going to be doing more geophysics there. Last year, we did some work that identified a very interesting surface showing. It's shown in the northern part of that graphic in a red circle. That lies about 800 meters north of the area that ever had any drilling in the past. The area that was drilled was targeting an alkaline porphyry system based on a mag signature, but as we did that work, we realized that the alteration we were seeing was more characteristic of calc-alkaline, a lot of strong phyllic alteration, and in probably the outer part of the phyllic zone, because we had some fairly consistently high gold values. The most noteworthy hole was hole 3, which was the hole that was furthest to the north and was drilled toward the north, or if you want, toward the new target area that we found. It graded better than 0.2 grams gold from top to bottom over 330 meters, and it actually bottomed in material that was better than half a gram gold. Copper was modest; it was there, but it wasn't anywhere near our grade. But the work in the area to the north showed that we had much stronger veining, stronger copper mineralization. It looks like we're closer to the center of the system. So that target's never been drilled. We're extending our IP coverage to cover that area as well. So we'll very much look forward to drilling that in future years, or partnering with somebody to drill. We'll see how things progress. Another place we're going to be doing IP is the Alada property. It lies about 40 kilometers south of Casino. It's a very interesting target. It's below tree line, no outcrop on the property. It sits within a very pronounced mag low, which is developed within a large pluton that otherwise is a mag high. So it looks as though we're seeing a lot of magnetite destruction and sulfidation. It's a part of the Yukon that's very strongly weathered. In fact, Casino deposit's got about 100-meter thick leach cap on top of it. We think we see the same kind of leaching here. Sulfides are rare at surface, but we have had numbers up to 0.4 copper and actually 8 grams gold. But typically, we're getting 0.1 to 0.3 grams gold in rocks from the zone. Very strong geochem anomalies. You can see the good zoning with copper and moly in the core, gold sort of across the whole of the zone, and then a fringing zone of lead and zinc and silver. So very classic porphyry style metal zonation indicated by that soil geochem. The IP will cover the core of the target where the copper, moly, gold is expected to be the best developed, and will certainly be drill ready at that point. We've got a lot of other metals, as we said in the introduction. They include critical metals. Really of note, got some excellent tin projects, some of the best vanadium projects in certainly in the northern part of Canada and the western part of Canada. We're very excited by the Van, for example, which is about twice the grade of shale-hosted vanadium targets that are being seriously considered for development in both Australia and Nevada. Got good tungsten projects, cobalt, nickel. So again, I won't spend too much time on it, but we're very, very encouraged by that. The fact that we have those critical metals and good copper and zinc projects has allowed us to do a financing. It was a flow-through, charitable flow-through financing focused on critical metals. I believe we were the first company in Canada to do it. It was completed at a price of 60 cents per share. So our current share price at around 28 cents is a pretty big discount to that. We raised a little over $1.8 million in total in that financing. So we're going to be working on a number of the critical metals projects, which include the porphyry coppers and some of the ones on this list on the screen now. So very excited by that opportunity. We mentioned that we'd acquired the Craig deposit since the last update. It lies in a very prolific belt, the Rackla belt, which hosts well known in recent years for the Carlin style gold mineralization. There's also replacement style gold mineralization. There's Mississippi Valley type lead, zinc, silver, and also high grade vein silver known within that district. Also, it's we have some very good vanadium occurrences in it as well, believe it or not. So it's I think a very important mineral belt. We already owned most of a belt of rocks, the carbonate rocks that host lead, zinc mineralization, Mississippi Valley type. But the best known and best defined target in the belt was the Craig, and it was held for many, many years by majors, continuously since the mid 1970s. And it came open finally. We were able to pick it up this spring. It's got a mineral resource that's very much open to expansion. It's just under 1 million tons of 4 ounces approximately silver, 8.5% lead, and 13% zinc. We've got a crew in right now mapping within the belt as a whole, but specifically within that corridor of lead zinc mineralization. There's 5 deposits there, or 5 zones that have been identified and by previous workers and ourselves over about a 6-kilometer strike length. 3 of them have got very significant drill results already from them. The Craig, of course, the Discovery Zone and the Trent Zone. The others have had very little work. in terms of drilling, but have also shown very good surface indications and certainly deserve to be drilled. Just to give you an size potential on it, the crag has been traced for almost a kilometer along strike and a couple hundred meters down dip, but it remains open, wide open in every direction. And the resource just comprises a tiny part of that bigger area. So we're really looking forward to getting the mapping results from there. We've got the crews working on 5 other projects within that belt. They include some high-grade silver lead vein targets, a very good copper project target that's an incredibly strong anomaly, and we're trying to see whether it's a VMS type source or possibly a maybe even a porphyry. It's crews still in there working on it now. Also looking at 1 Carlin target. So very diverse styles of mineralization, and we should have results coming out of that in about a month to a month and a half. Hopper, we mentioned that CAPU was drilling in there. For comparison, you can see Casino and the Casino deposit up in the right-hand corner. A very, very strong anomaly Hopper. That's shown at the same size, scale, and the same intensity. So gives you an idea of the size potential. Most of the discoveries have been made a little bit to the south of the main geochem anomaly, and that's what we refer to as the South Skarn Zone. CAPU drilled in there last year and got some excellent results. This year they've drilled more holes in there, and they've also drilled up in the Porphyry target to the further to the north. So they've suggested that there's some very interesting mineralization in the holes that are being completed. I know they're waiting for assays and hope to get back in there and drill a lot more later this year. So we're waiting for those results. Just to give you an idea, one of the targets, it's just part of the South Skarn Zone. That last year, one of their holes cut 1.4% copper and a little over 0.5 grams gold across 22 meters. That's nearly a true width, so it's a pretty impressive intercept. The other holes nearby were also well mineralized. So target's very open and extends well beyond that geophysical anomaly that they were targeting. Okay, before we get into questions and everything, I have a couple more things I'd like to go over. Major equity interests in other companies. We'll start at the top of the circle. Rockhaven, we've got just under 32% of Rockhaven. They're just completing a sizable financing. They'll be starting a drill program in just a couple days. They're going to be drilling off parts of the deposit that aren't currently in the indicated category, and doing some exploration outside of the known deposit as well. I anticipate that their work this year will result in a significant increase in their resources, and we believe that they're going to be moving toward a pre-feasibility study later this year, or probably next year by the time it gets completed. So very excited to see where they go. Terra CO2. We've been diluted down now to a little under 12%, but we still have some warrants that are very much in the money that would take us back up over 15 again. They have completed some large financings with major players as partners. They've announced some of them, Breakaway Energy, which is a Bill Gates Foundation company. Another one is the Lennox Group, a very large construction company in the US, and Rio Tinto, who is attracted to the potential for tailings disposal that's indicated by the technology. Basically, they're looking for alternatives to Portland cement, very environmentally friendly and cost effective. It could result in about a 50% or more reduction in CO2 generated in the production of the cement, which is really important on the world CO2 balance. So very excited by that project. They're moving ahead independently and nearing construction of their first plant. GGL, they've got an excellent project in Gold Point in Nevada. Very excited. It's a camp scale land position with 4 former producers on it. Completed some surface work and expecting to do more underground work here in the next few months, and that hopefully will lead to drilling later this year. We own just under 35% of that company. Honey Badger has got silver projects that we sold them. That's how we got our just under 20% interest in the company. They've also got recently acquired a project in Chile, which is close to a producing mine and hopefully can go into production quickly. So they're quite aggressive in the silver space. Silver Range project generator. There was a spin out from us working in Nevada, Northwest Territories, and Nunavut. They've got a lot of projects under option and are constantly acquiring new ground. So they're very effective in their space. Precipitate. Their main project was in the Dominican Republic, but they've shifted a lot of their focus to Newfoundland. We've got again about a 16% interest in the company. We're quite happy with what management is doing. They announced a large. There was a property sale that netted them about $5 million US for a project in the Dominican that was certainly not one of their core assets. So they're in good shape. And finally, Broden Mining. I think this is one of the major blue skies for the company. They continue to work on the acquisition of the Faro Mining District in partnership with Rossroy Denny Corp. Taking a little longer to get the final agreement signed than they'd hoped, but they're still working toward that goal, and I think we'll accomplish it soon. Plus, they're working on the technical side very diligently, so they're not letting any grass grow under their feet. They're moving toward their economic evaluations of the project. So very exciting by our interest there. We've got just under 33% of the company. So and they're well financed as well going forward. Broden, I don't want to spend too much time on here because I want to leave some time for questions, but I think it's worth pointing out the size of the resource there. The Faro camp was once one of the largest mines in lead zinc mines in Canada. It was certainly the largest mine that's ever operated in Yukon. But a lot of the resource in the district was not mined. In fact, there was one large open pit, the Grum deposit, which was production had just started from, and when they shut down. So they've got about 5.3 billion pounds of zinc there, 3.5 billion pounds of lead, 111 million ounces of silver, and 870,000 ounces of gold in the resources that are on the property. Those are both historic and current 43-101. So they'll be updating some of those resources when the acquisition is complete, and I believe that they'll be moving forward directly with economic evaluation. So it's a very significant project. Again, we just talked a bit about the resources. And so what they're acquiring, and it's important to understand this, so the areas shown in red and the areas shown in purple, which are where some of the major deposits, the unmined deposits, are. They are also have an agreement with Silver Range Resources to acquire all the areas shown in green, and there's one deposit on the Silver Range ground as well, the Keg, which is predominantly a silver project. But what they're not acquiring and taking on any liability for is the area shown in blue. And that's really important. Most of the environmental liability in the Faro camp is on in and around the old Faro mine site in the area shown in blue. And our agreement doesn't make us liable for any environmental liability until such time as we go into production. And then we only take on the liability on the areas that we're acquiring. So it's a very good deal for both Broden and the First Nation, and I think it's a very important deal for Canada and the First Nation in terms of reconciliation and moving forward. So just to recap, what's going to maybe move our stock this year? Certainly Rockhaven, if they move toward pre-feasibility, we've got a lot of shares, and it could really be lucrative for us if they're successful with their projects this year. CAVU, if they make another major discovery like Casino or the higher grade skarns, which are very similar in grade to the skarns near Whitehorse at the Whitehorse Copper, which were mined profitably back in the 70s and 80s. So it's got two shots on that one. So we're looking forward to them doing more work. Broden, I think that has potential to move forward extremely quickly toward mining. We just got to get those final agreements signed, and I think that company will be off and running. Terra CO2 could be a massive disruptor in the cement field. I think the potential on that one is enormous. And finally, we've got our own projects, so we're getting a lot of interest with the PDAC recently completed. We talked with a lot of different groups about what they might be interested in. They include both miners and majors, so or juniors and majors. So I think that we'll be doing more transactions in the next few months, and very much looking forward to some of the results that we get from our own surface work. Um, it's not inconceivable we'll drill one of the projects, but in this current market, we want to be a little bit careful. We've got good zinc project we could drill. We've got a number of good copper projects and a vanadium project that I think is very low risk and potentially high reward as well. So we've got to be a little careful what we do, and we're not going to rush in any snap decisions on drilling. So that's pretty much a good synopsis for you. If you've got questions long term, you can get a hold of Richard or myself. But right now, if you've got questions, I'd love to have them.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Doug, for that great presentation. So right now we'll turn to the Q&A portion of the webinar, and just a reminder to everybody on the line that you can type in your questions at any point now. So we've had a couple come in already. First one here, with the share price at its current level, why doesn't Strategic Metals aggressively repurchase stock pursuant to an issuer bid?
Well, I don't want to tip off our plans too much, but we certainly have plans in place to repurchase. We would do it, but we obviously want to get the best deal for our shareholders, and I'm not going to mention where our trigger prices might be or let too much on the bag, but it certainly is being considered.
Okay, perfect. So turning to next question, you touched on the timing of the Broden IPO. It's taking a little bit longer than you were hoping. Is there anything else that you can kind of expand on that, on the question or the time frame?
Well, I don't think I should say too much, because there's a number of government to government type. There's the federal government's very much involved through their abandoned mines division. And ultimately, though, it has to go up the board beyond there for final approval. Yukon government certainly has to approve it. We have our First Nation partners at Ross River involved in the project, and there are two other First Nations that are also part of the ferro-wreck remediation plan. And so all of those ducks have to be aligned for the final agreements to be signed. And all I can say is there's a lot of discussions going on among the various parties. I don't think Canada would have allowed us to announce the transaction back in December if they weren't wholeheartedly supportive of it. I think that it's just a question of bringing all the pieces together and making sure that it's done in a way that collaboration is so complete that there's no grounds for any kind of lawsuit going forward. I don't think anybody, any level of government or the company wants that. So we're making sure that all the consultation is done properly, and when the deal gets signed, the deal gets signed.
Yeah, perfect. So we've had a couple different people ask on the status of Mount Hinton. Maybe you could provide an update on that.
Mount Hinton technically is still under option to another group, but we believe we're going to get it back sooner rather than later. I think it could happen within the next month. It's obviously a project that we really like, and it's situated in a belt of rocks where there's some pretty successful exploration underway by other parties right now. Banyan's had some really good success a little bit to the north of us. Keno Hill obviously is getting their mines back into production, and I know that Victoria Gold is producing successfully and is still exploring and finding more. So I think we're in a sweet spot in terms of exploration, and I believe we'll get it back and be spending some money on it ourselves this year. Or I know we've already had previous interest from other people about it. So as soon as we get it back, we'll let the world know that we've got it back, and then we'll have some discussions with various parties and see where it might go forward.
Great. Okay. Another question in here, just wondering about any influences of inflation on the business.
Inflation is going to affect everybody to some degree. In our case, because the crews were all hired sort of before it took off, we don't have any direct employees, so it's being done through contractors. But I don't think we're going to have wage inflation that affect us this year, but going forward, it certainly will. Fuel, yeah, we use helicopters and whatnot, but because we aren't drilling right now, our diesel use is fairly minimal, so it's mostly just some helicopter time. I haven't seen the inflation yet in terms of helicopter hours, the hourly rate, but certainly going forward is going to be a factor, and it'll be a factor in evaluating the economics of projects. The idea of using 5% discount rates is gone. I think everybody's going to be stuck with 8, and that might creep up over time. But it's certainly, fortunately, we don't have any projects ourselves that are nearing production or in the midst of economic evaluation, so it's not too much, not causing too many real complications for us yet. Companies like Rockhaven, which are going to be doing a pre-feasibility, obviously are going to have to be very careful of how they define their parameters, and it's going to have to be considered carefully there.
Great. Okay. So next question here, just wondering in terms of results, you kind of said you're going to be evaluating everything very strategically this year, given the current market. What kind of, I guess, cadence of results should investors expect, whether it's from the geophysics or other work you have in the pipeline right now?
Okay, well, there's always the opportunity for new discovery, and to some degree, obviously they're very, very exciting when that happens. So I can't predict what will happen in that regard. You'll certainly see some much more detailed information coming out on the Crag mineral belt. We've got a crew doing detailed mapping in there, so that'll give us a much better idea of the continuity of the mineralization and the controls. I think that there's potential in that belt for I'll go out on a limb and say 15 million tons of better than 12% lead zinc with significant silverite, or if you want better than 12% zinc equivalent. I think it could be quite a bit better than that. The mineralization is pretty splashy, and it's responded well to drilling. It just the last drilling that was done in there was done in the 1970s, so it's been tied up and held by the majors for a long, long time, and this is the first time somebody's really gone back and taken a thorough look at it. Obviously, we'll be seeing drill results from CAVU, and I think some of the geophysical results that we're going to be getting could be quite insightful. It'll give us, for example, an idea at a lot of how deep the leach cap might be at a lot, and how strong might the mineralization be beneath that cap. At Mint, I'd certainly like verification that there was a good system, good porphyry system developing at depth beneath the surface target. All the indications there is that it's extremely young. It's 40 million years, 39 million years old. It's very high level in terms of its erosion. We're right up in the Koval volcanic pile. The rocks there are diorites with as an intrusion, and predominantly basalts as the wall rock. So it's a very, very good host for porphyry style mineralization. But all the indications are that we're right at the top of the system. So the geophysics there could give us an idea of how robust the system is at depth and really define some excellent drill targets. And we're doing geophysical surveys at CD as well. There, we've already done IP and we've got a nice target, but we needed better understanding of the magnetic response and the radiometrics before we do any drilling in there. So all three of those porphyries, I think, are going to be advanced very significantly this year. And I expect some pretty good surface results from other targets that we're working on. I won't bother going over all of them, but there'll be a number of results, and I expect some interesting results from them.
Perfect. Okay. You have another question here. Not sure how much you can say on this, but wondering if Strategic will participate in Rockhaven's current private placement.
Yeah, we're going to participate. We won't be participating on a pro rata basis. We'll be diluted slightly, but it won't. We'll still have a very large interest. I expect we'll still be around 30%, down a couple of percentage points from where we are now. Yeah, we the underwriting was done at a price that was below our average in cost, so we're averaging down. It was or I think it will be participating with when they announced that it closes with other strong groups. So it's I think we wanted to be part of it still, and very much looking forward to where they go.
Great. Okay. We do have a follow-up question here to the inflation question. Just wondering, for companies that are buying or optioning your projects, inflation and interest rates plays a role. Is the interest in projects getting slower, the same, or increasing?
Actually, I have to credit it in part to two things. I would say, believe it or not, it's picked up a bit for earlier stage projects. And one of the reasons for that is that the critical metals flow through, I think, has created a bit of an opportunity for some companies to raise some money. And as that gets more traction, as the rules get a little better defined, and it's actually passed into law, I think there'll be increasing interest and a real motivation there. There remains interest in gold projects and silver projects. Again, everybody looking at inflation and all the horrible things that are happening, there's still definitely an interest in the potential shelter that's there. But the other one is copper. We're getting a fair number of people asking about the copper assets, so it's kind of counterintuitive. You'd think that it might slow down, but it's actually, we're seeing a little bit more than we did say 2 months ago. So hopefully that trend will continue.
Great. Okay. It's very insightful to hear from your perspective on that. So I think you're through pretty well all the questions that have come in. So maybe if you could just sum everything up and outline the opportunity for investors, or leave a final thought for investors before we sign off.
Okay, well, maybe I'll go with the final thought idea, because I think we've kind of summarized it before. My final thought is, if you look at the chart specifically for the NASDAQ, but you can look at other big charts. There's really only one time period in the last 30, 40, 50 years that really looks like what we're going through right now. And that was the tech bubble in the late 90s and early 2000s. And what followed that, and again, it's kind of tracking very similar to eerily similarly. It was a period of very low interest in mineral exploration during the bubble. And as it started to break, everybody got scared, and it wasn't particularly good for mineral exploration either. But as we started to move away from it, investors became more interested progressively in commodities, and it was a very good run. It was broken a little bit in 2008, 2009 by the financial crisis, but it ran pretty much from around 2002, 2003 through to 2012. And those were the best 10 years of my career in terms of metal pricing and the ability to raise money. So if history repeats itself to any degree, I think we could be into a very, very strong cycle for a wide variety of metals. What we've got this time around, which we didn't have the last time, yes, we still have interest in precious metals. Yes, we still have interest in base metals, But now the critical metal space has become increasingly important and increasingly attractive. And I think that I can't think of any company that's more diversified than we are and has more exposure to all of those fields than we do. And so I think that the very low share price that we have right now, coupled with where I think we could be in a few years, I think it's a pretty good investment opportunity. Last time we ran from about 15 cents to $4. So again, I don't know if history will repeat itself, but potential is there. So that's my closing thought.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much, both Doug and Richard from Strategic Metals for taking the time to host the webinar today with Red Cloud Securities. And thank you to everybody on the line for tuning in with us.